The following presentation is brought to you by the Realm Network.
Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. I am your host, JP John Poz. And of course, joining me today is the man behind the Death of WCW book and the man behind Wrestle Crap, Mr. RD Reynolds. RD, how you doing today, sir?
I'm amazingly blessed. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, no problem at all. Always wanted to get you on and kind of just shoot the shit and talk about, many different things. But first and foremost, what have you been up to?
Been working on the website. This will be 21 years
Whoa.
of WrestleCrap.com. Yes, sir.
Jesus. Wow.
April 1st. April 1st is 21 years. So the site now is legally allowed to go drink. It needs a few drinks after all the stuff we've covered over the years.
Was that purposely done, April 1st?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I just thought that would be a good date, April Fools and everything. And it's really weird because that date is kind of spilled over into other parts of my life. I helped to open a business in the Netherlands. And I said, okay, we can do it, but it's got to be on April 1st. And they're like, why? And I was just like, trust me, it worked out well for other things.
Yes. Insane. Where'd you get the idea? Like when you first started out 21 years ago, like where did you kind of get the idea?
I had paid too much for a computer and I felt I needed to justify having spent $3,999.
Wow.
I mean, that's like $15,000 now or something.
Yes.
On a computer. And I was like, I really got to justify this. I should probably try and figure out, how to do like a website or something. And so I kept bouncing around ideas, and my main hobbies and passions, video games and wrestling. And I was like, okay, well, there's lots of, even back then, there were lots of wrestling sites. There were lots of video game sites. I at the time, I didn't have sources or anything. I didn't know Dave Meltzer or Brian or anybody. And I was like, I just want to do, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I got to do something. And I was talking to my buddy one night, and this was the height of the Monday Night Wars. And he said, man, did you see this thing on Nitro? And I was like, oh, yeah, that was pretty bad. And he goes, well, that's the worst thing I ever saw. And I was like, you never saw the gobbledygooker. And then he countered with, well, what about the Black Scorpion? And we just went back and forth for about an hour. And I said, boom, got the idea. And I was trying to come up with what I could call it, the worst of wrestling, wrestling Hall of Shame, something like that. I remember just looking at my wife, I go, what do you think about WrestleCrap.com? And she just looked at me and rolled her eyes. And I was like, that's the reaction I wanted. Nice. So that's where the idea came from. So, yeah.
Such a great idea. Like, if you just go back and think about it, I know there's been a lot of kind of copycats over the years. I don't know if you've quite noticed that, but there's been a bunch. But I know it just, especially at that time period when you guys came out, that's like, wow, this is an awesome idea, because me and my friends, we would always have this tape called like a screw up tape. So, yep. You develop a tape and have all the screw ups, and one of us would edit, add stuff to it, and the other one, and you watch. So you guys had it down to a science.
Yeah, it was interesting because we were one of the first people that would go in, and this drove my wife nuts too, is I would just say, okay, we got to drive around to all the video stores and see what tapes we could find. Because, we were doing tape trading too. But, I mean, it was something that not a lot of people understood. Okay, if you hook up a VCR to a computer, you can grab video off of that. You couldn't really grab video because it was so archaic back then. I mean, YouTube was years away, but I had to run around to video stores or do tape trading to try and find, just raw footage of this stuff. Me driving around going, I don't think we've checked that Blockbuster. They opened a new Hollywood Video. We should go check that. And, just trying to find wrestling tapes just to record the stuff, because, audio back then, that was real new too, dating myself. But again, it's been 21 years. It was just a lot of running the tech as best we could to grab, and make animated GIFs, 3-frame animated GIFs was, whoo, look at that.
Yep.
That guy fell through a wall, that was, something,
I remember we used to go around to the video stores too and try to get the tapes, especially if they would actually sell the tapes and not just rent them.
Right.
Hey, will you sell it? So
Oh
I
yeah.
remember this one lady was like, We sold the tape to somebody, and now I'm starting to think that these tapes are worth more than I'm selling them for." So they're like, "Oh no, damn! I mean, somebody got there before us and bought a bunch." Yes, they were like, "Damn!" So I remember I got WrestleFest '94, but
Yep.
like for a decent price. She was trying to charge me like $20. Well, yeah, I have a 10. Trying to go back and forth. But that is such a thing, like around that generation for fans like us. It's like we got to get those tapes.
I had a great guy, he's still a friend of mine, named Wild Bill
Oh, I
Brown.
remember him. Yeah, I bought some
Oh
tapes from
yeah,
him at conventions. Yep.
he was the man, and he really helped me out finding a lot of this stuff, because I'd be like, man, I just cannot find footage of Max Moon or Fantasio or all these gimmicks that were only around for a very, very brief time. I mean, Fantasio, I think, had like one televised match, and so just trying to get that stuff now, that's the thing, is life changes, technology changes. Now you can just Google. There was Metacrawler or whatever back then, and it was also crude, and you couldn't find that stuff. And now you Google Fantasio, boom, there's the YouTube link, and you can watch it. And
Yep.
and that's, I mean, it's awesome, don't get me wrong. I love having access to YouTube, Daily Motion, WWE Network, however long that's gonna be around. I love that stuff, but it was just a different world back then. So we kind of had technology on our side. It's funny you mentioned the copycats, because a lot of people consider, like, Wrestling with Regret or Botchamania or something like that copycats, and I just consider them like good friends now who do it better than I ever did. So I was thrilled to meet both of those guys and become friends with them, because they have done something that I didn't do. They've made it into a video medium, and then who knows what it's going to wind up being, people that go after them, because it will always, I mean, it's a comedy. It's seeing ridiculous wrestling, a guy hatching out of an egg. There's always going to be wrestle crap. There's always going to be that worst of wrestling. The Wrestling with Regret, Botchamania. You're always going to have that as long as there's pro wrestling around, and of course, we all hope that'll be for decades and millennia to come.
Was it last week or the week before Randy Orton was spitting out the black goo or whatever?
Right,
I mean,
Shango, baby.
Yep. Ultimate Warrior style. So it's like, man, it just never ends with the stupid stuff. I think
What's
recently
old is goo again.
Yes. And I think you just put on your site that horrible karaoke segment. I think that got an induction. Yeah.
Yeah. That was just, there's always something horrible. And that's what I've always said about wrestling. I always want it to either be really, really good. I would prefer it, honestly, to be really, really good, even though I don't have material then. I love really, really good wrestling. I love really, really terrible wrestling, obviously. The worst is when it's just in the middle and it's just boring. That's that. A lot of Raws are like that these days. You're like, oh man, can I slog through this 3 hours? And it's tough.
It's been like that for a while on Raw, but that's why I like when they put that Randy Orton stuff in there, because like, okay, here we go now I can laugh or get into this.
Yeah, at least it's something different.
Yeah, I know they've had some bright spots, but I mean, you kind of root for a little bit of the bad spots a bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm always hoping for. I don't want it to just overflow like it kind of seemed to do last year with Retribution and all the Fiend stuff. But yeah, I mean, I love seeing the ridiculous stuff. That's a lot of people always point to WCW like 99 2000. Like, oh my gosh, that was like the worst stuff ever. It's like it was. Don't get me wrong, but it was also something that it was it was that car wreck you really couldn't take your eyes off of. At least I guess everybody else did, because their numbers just went like that.
Right.
But I mean, I always enjoyed it because I would always sit there and go, okay, this is a train wreck happening before my eyes. Kind of wanted to see just how disastrous it would be. Years later, I got to talk to Vince Russo. And so, a lot of people always think, oh man, Artie and Russo are going to like go at each other's throats. But it's something where we both realize we just see wrestling two completely different ways. That doesn't make either of us terrible or evil or trying to ruin the world. It's just we see things completely differently. And so we a lot of times we just have a good laugh, a good laugh at what a disaster it all was.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because not that it was like unfriendly the first time around, but when you
Mhm.
first talked with Russo, was it like a little awkward? It's like, I kind of wrote this book and I kind of ripped you a little bit, or, I kind of stuck it to you a bit. Was it awkward the first time you guys talked?
Yeah, it was, and it was funny because I was on his podcast. I don't know, earlier this year, I think, and he had told me, because I had you on my show and just hated you. I hated you so much because I would just be ranting and raving and you would just be smiling and laughing at
Hmm.
me because I won't get hooked in. I won't be drawn into a fight like that because again, I just see it as different people doing different things. The same thing whenever I did that thing with Bischoff.
Yep.
I mean, everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, you really should have gone at him." And I was like, "And accomplish what exactly?" Because he's going to have his view. I almost view it as like, and this is probably a terrible thing to say. When I was in college, the death penalty was something that was always debated. Oh, should we have the death penalty? Or should we not have the death penalty? And I view, especially the death of WCW a lot that way too. It's like the death penalty. Just follow me for a second.
Hmm.
In that, Eric Bischoff or Vince Russo or R.D. Reynolds or Brian Alvarez or whoever, none of us are going to say something to the other one that's going to get them to go, you know what? I never thought of that. And the same thing with like the death penalty. No one's going to, if you're whichever way you go, okay, no one's going to come to you and say something to you you have not thought of before that's going to change your mind and it's going to flip the switch. It's just not going to happen. And it's same thing with people involved in wrestling, and everybody's got to defend themselves. And also, I mean, everybody's experience is different. I could only imagine the stress Russo was under or Bischoff was under or whatever, and doesn't really give them a free pass on decisions they made, certainly, because I mean it wound up crippling the wrestling business for decades. It's always interesting talking to the different people because you'll get just different reactions. And now Russo and I mean, I don't know, we talk to each other, I don't know, once every month or two. It's never about wrestling. It's, oh my gosh, did you see this Batman 66 collectible figure, or whatever that he may have found? We just talk about stuff like that, and it's just like two friends talking now, and that's actually kind of cool.
It is pretty cool.
Mhm.
And it's interesting to see where it started off, and
Oh
then
yeah.
kind of where it ended up. When you initially were writing about him and stuff, was there any like vitriol there? Like, oh, like were you mad or was just kind of just getting the information and being like, oh, that stinks, that stinks? Or were you really like kind of mad about it at all? Like, oh, I wish you wouldn't have done that.
It was funny whenever we started Death of WCW, Brian Alvarez, figure4weekly.com, f4wonline.com. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, make sure you send me that check, Brian. Did you do that? When we started writing that, I'll never forget it because I was just thinking of those horrible nitros, those 99 and 2000 nitros where nothing made sense, and it was a disaster, and people would vanish and the title would change hands 37 times in a month. And I was like, oh man, because I just want to make people laugh. That's what WrestleCrap was designed from day one. Is I just want to make people laugh. It wasn't never really anything. I want people to have deep thoughts about this. I just want to make people laugh. So I was just thinking, I can't wait. This is going to be really, really fun to write this book. And Brian said to me, you were going to get really depressed writing this book. I was like, dude, no, we're not. Don't you remember the graveyard match and that junkyard match where everybody got injured? And all this, the David Arquette winning the world title. How on earth am I going to get depressed writing about this? So I started going back and I was watching Nitro basically from the beginning and really starting to go into that. And I'm like seeing all these great, luchador matches, all these great cruiserweight matches, all this different types of wrestling and all this excitement. And I was like, oh my gosh, this show is so awesome. I'd forgotten how awesome it was. And then I was like, and now I got to write about how it's gone in 5 years. And yeah, I got a little depressed.
I could see that. Yep, I could see that.
Yeah. So I don't know that I ever got like really I don't know that I ever got angry at Russo or Bischoff or Kevin Nash or any of the rest of them. Maybe a little bit, just because they had something so wonderful and it was squandered. These days, for sure, I don't have anything against them. If I did at the time, it's not the case now, because everyone's situation is different. And I think the thing is, they just didn't know what they had. And I think if they did, they may have protected a little better.
As far as Bischoff and that debate, I know that was part of, I guess it was part of StarCast, right? If I'm
Yep.
remembering correctly.
Yep.
Was he like, I know he was kind of like getting like maybe a little loud, I guess you could say, or how was he getting towards you? And like, what's the relationship there? Was he just angry the whole time?
He was, yeah, it was funny because you have the Death of WCW book. You held it up before we went on the air.
Oh yeah,
right?
right here.
Yeah. And you can see that picture of him. I picked out that picture. It's the worst picture ever. I mean, it was just and I told him, I said, that was dirty pool, old man, as Gomez Adams once said. It was really wrong of me to take that picture and put it on the front of the book, but I had to, because it was such an awful picture. And so we opened it up, and before we even went on stage, I'll never forget it. Bischoff pulls me aside. And I had met him the night before, because we were there. And we were doing a Wrestle Crap thing too. Okay, I got to tell that part of the story first. We were doing a Wrestle Crap panel, and we did that the day before, as I recall. Katie Vick in a casket, because we own the Katie Vick outfit. We bought it years ago from WWE. We had the Oz robe from when Kevin Nash played the Great and Powerful Oz in WCW. Actual gobbledygooker outfit.
Oh,
and
wow.
So we're like running around StarCast, just making noise and just being buffoons and everything else, because we're just having the time of our lives. After the Wrestle Crap panel, they said, you guys have a meet and greet, for you to meet people. People have paid to get autographs, get pictures and all that. So great. That's really cool. I can't believe anybody would ever want a picture with me, but it's fine. Cool. So they wheel us in this room. And again, we're pushing the Katie Vick casket and everything, and just making a mockery out of everything, just hooting and hollering. And we go into this room, and over in the corner, Eric Bischoff, who I'd never met, he had passed me like several times, but we had never, ever met. He was over in the corner, and he's just watching us. What on earth is this? You could just see it on his face. Who are these guys? Why do they have a casket? They've got the gobbledygooker outfit. What on earth is this? So I went over to him, and I just said, Eric? And he says, yes. And I said, I'm R.D. Reynolds. And I put my hand out for him to shake it. And he looked at me, and he looked over at Katie Vick and the guy in the gobbledygooker outfit, and he just buries his hand in his hands. He goes, oh my God. Like, it was like the worst thing ever. So that was actually how we met. We met the day before. Kind of had some vague idea of what I was. And before we went on stage, he goes, just so you know, I do not do comedy. I won't do comedy, but I play the part of an a-hole really well. And I said, okay. And I said, well, I do comedy, and I didn't say this to him, but it was in the back of my mind the whole time I was going to do this thing. I was like, this thing is going to be a clown show. And if it's going to be a clown show, I'm going to wear giant shoes and a bright red nose. I want to make this thing as much of a clown show as I possibly can. So the reason I brought up the book and that terrible picture is I went on stage and I was wearing a jacket. And I said, Eric, Kevin Sullivan was there, and David Penzer, and I said really nice things about both of them. And I made some comment about how, Bischoff, you're great too. I loved you as the old man preacher in that SmackDown, that Billy and Chuck wedding. I know why you don't like me. I said, it's the picture that I put on the front of the book, and I unzipped my jacket, and I actually had a blown up that picture on my shirt. I said, Eric, we can make a lot of money. I have this photo. We can make shirts. And I said, and I went and got some like these stick heads, it was like a cut out of his head. And I said, yelled out to my buddy I had in the audience. I said, I got this one, but in order to get one, I had to buy like a bunch of them. And, so I'm not even going to sell them. I don't want to, I don't want to do that. I said, but yelled at my buddy, hey, how many of these we got? And he goes, about 500 of them. I said, hand them out to everyone in the crowd. So we just handed out these ridiculous, heads of Eric Bischoff. And he did not find humor in it, but I think it was something that caught him a little bit off guard, that somebody would come at it like from such a weird angle. Yeah, again, I'm not going to get into a big dukeroo with anybody. And I even said, because that was the weekend of that StarCast, that debate. That was what was the first? It wasn't in AEW at the time. It was All In. Yeah. And I had said this to Matt Jackson, who I saw just hanging out in the hotel lobby, and he came, I went up and said, hey, aren't you Matt Jackson? I said, yeah, I'm the Wrestle Cup guy, and we had a nice little chat. I said, it's really cool, Matt, what you guys are trying to do. You're trying to reinvent the business. And I thought about that, and that's what Bischoff did too. And we even said that in the book, he really reinvented a business that it was in dire need of being reinvented. And I said, that's really cool. I said, that's what, these guys are trying to do. It wasn't AEW at the time, but these guys, the Bucks and Cody and everybody else, they're all trying to reinvent the business. And I said, Eric, that's what you did. I said, we said nice things about you in the book. Maybe you should read the book sometime. And then he told me, afterwards, that he had never actually read the book and he was never going to. And we laughed about it, and actually, took pictures of him like flipping me off. And then there's a picture where we were walking like essentially into the sunset together. It was completely absurd. But yeah, I have nothing against Bischoff. I mean, all these guys, the Bischoffs, the Cornettes, and everybody else, I would hope people understand these people are all still playing characters. That's what they do. And there may be some of what they actually feel in there, but these guys on their podcasts and everything, they're playing characters, especially, Cornette. I mean, anybody that doesn't see that's just a character. Bischoff too. I mean, whenever he goes ranting and raving, I mean, anybody that doesn't see that, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, they're playing a character just like Roman Reigns or anybody else is.
He never read the book. How come he's so anti the book? Just because of the name of it and the picture on the cover?
That is a great question. I think because people had told him things that were in the book leading up to that. I was listening to a lot of the 83 weeks. And Eric, I mean, Eric's a great character. He's fantastic. I still think that, outside of Vince McMahon, he is just a incredible heel authority figure. I think he's just dynamite. I think he's just fantastic. Sometimes he gets a little lost in that. He just kind of plays it up. And it was funny because he didn't even know who had read the book. I mean, in the past, he has said, Alex Marsvez and Dave Meltzer. And, we actually talked about that. I said, because he had mentioned it on stage. He was like, well, this is what you and Meltzer would write. And I was like, why on earth would you mention, me and Meltzer? He goes, well, Dave wrote that book. I was like, no, Dave didn't write that book. And that was me and Brian Alvarez. Oh, I didn't know that. I'm like, oh, okay. So I think it's just something. If let's say that I had a company and it went out of business, and there was this, pretty well received book that, said all these terrible, supposedly terrible things about me. People had told me, oh, what that guy said about you in this book, and I didn't read it. I don't know that I would want to read it either. It's self-defense, right? Would you really want to read a book about things that a company that you brought to the greatest of heights, the biggest wrestling company in the world up until that time, and then it crashed and burned? I don't know that I would want to read that either. So I don't even really blame him. I know Russo hasn't read it either. I totally understand why. But like I said, and I said this on stage, I said it to him behind the scenes. So, we said nice things about you. So, at some point, it may be worth your time to at least get to the parts of the book where we did say nice things about you. So.
As far as like that book, Bischoff always promotes Nitro, the book by Guy Evans.
Great book.
Yeah. Oh, I love the book. I like both books. I've read them both, but it's interesting. He was saying that Nitro is more accurate, I guess I'll just say. And I actually interviewed Brian Alvarez last year, and I asked him. He said there's no difference between the books. So
actually, if you talk Guy, because Guy who
yeah,
wrote Nitro,
yep.
because I've talked with him too, and I said, well, to me, when Nitro came out, everybody's like, oh boy, you guys it's gonna just show you everything that you wrote that was all lies. And you actually see like reviews about that. Nitro is not lies like Death of WCW was. But if you read it, it was like, I was so happy when Nitro came out, because if you read Nitro, and one of the things that we were slagged on is, okay, well, you didn't talk to, the certain people. Okay.
Right.
And I was like, yes, some of those people, I mean, we tried to get a hold of them and no one wanted to talk to us. It's okay. But whenever you read their accounts, it basically confirmed everything we said in Death of WCW. The books are different because Guy's is more, I guess, analytical would be the thing to use, and ours is way more opinionated. I mean, we are not afraid to say anything. The other thing is, again, you got to keep in mind, the guy, one of the co-authors of that, he's the Wrestle Crap guy. He wants to write funny stuff. He wants to, talk comedy. And so Guy's book is a little drier. Ours is a little more, I think, is funnier, and that was designed that way. But they both tell the same stories and both basically confirm what the other one has said. So I'd even talked to Guy about that. And it's like, what did you find, that was different? Did you find anything in Death of WCW that completely contradicted, what you found writing Nitro? And he said, no, not really. There were a few little things here and there, but it was nothing major. But no, I cannot say enough good things about Nitro. I thought that was a great book. Thought it was fantastic. And again, it was nice because it just confirmed what we were saying all along.
It's interesting too that maybe your book, when you did it in 2005, maybe it was too close to get some of those interviews. Maybe those guys didn't want to talk about it at that point.
Oh,
he does it, almost 20 years later, so maybe more people want to talk about it.
It was also something that at that time, especially because and this was the case with the WrestleCrap book too. Any of those books, especially WrestleCrap.com. I mean, whenever that first started, I was trying to get interviews with people. And I mean, imagine, some guy calling you up and say, yeah, I have a website. I talk about the worst of wrestling. I thought of you. You want to talk with us? The only guy that ever took me up on it was, God bless his soul, Earthquake John Tenta. Such a nice dude. And he just
you wrote
the nicest
forward for the
guy.
book, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely. And he was the first person that would do an interview with us. And he was just like, if I can't laugh at myself, everyone should be able to laugh at themselves. And he was so far ahead of his time. And it was really, really nice. As far as when we did Death of WCW, they were either under contract with WWE, so they didn't, they're not going to put their name in a non-sanctioned book. The other thing is, or they were what I call the Dennis Stamps of the world, beyond the mat, right?
I'm not booked. Sorry,
yeah, I'm not booked, right? But I might be booked. They were all waiting for that call from Vince. And I think a lot of them were just afraid, if I'd say something in this book, even if it's something, whatever, even if it's something negative about WCW and Vince should like that, I think they were still really, really scared because there was still that window of opportunity. I might get that call. I may be the guy that's going to face Triple H this year at WrestleMania. People thought that, and of course they weren't, but I can also understand, one of the things I never ever want to say negative about anybody in professional wrestling, and this has been this way since day one at WrestleCrap, is at the end of the day, these are guys trying to put, and women trying to put, food on the table, trying to put a roof over their heads, trying to provide for their families. And so our thing was always, we never want to say anything negative about the wrestlers, because generally this isn't what they had signed up. Like if you went to John Tenta, he'd never said, you know what I want to do? I want to be the Shark, Yeah. He was just like, no, it was something I did because it was something that someone told me to do. And I think it's the same thing there. You have to be able to provide for your family. So if it's something that, could jeopardize that, you don't want to do that. And I completely understand why.
It's interesting, like Fred Ottman now, years later, is like okay with it. They made the Shockmaster figure. It in the box, it's actually upside down and stuff. So it's funny that the guys now, it seems like they get it more like, oh, I can make some money, with the jokey stuff, and I can
Yep.
sign this figure. So I feel like nowadays it's a lot better. But back then, you're right, it was a little bit more like, oh, you're making fun of me, you're putting me down. They were not into it.
We tried for years to get Fred Ottman on Wrestle Crap Radio. We could never get him. Even when we had Quake on, we'd have Quake on like several times. Quake always said, "Oh, Fred's a great guy. I for sure he should be on the show with you. You guys are awesome. He would have a really, really good time." And he just wouldn't do it. And then, like you said, after a few years, the switch flipped, and Fred Ottman, we had him on the show one time, and he was absolutely hysterical.
He's
He's
great,
just
yeah.
awesome guy. He's so funny, and he's so, realizes, okay, I tripped, but that's okay. It to this day, okay, let's say he had come out and that had gone successfully. Okay, he's in a he's in a stormtrooper helmet covered in glitter. He came out, he busted through the wall, he's there with Davey Boy and Sting. Okay. Would anybody talk about that today if he had not tripped? And the answer is probably not.
Yeah.
It would probably go down with just something else that would be Johnny B. Bad's bad blaster gun thing that he had, or Max Payne or whatever, something that was just kind of a forgotten thing, and he made it famous by things not going quite right.
And then live on in infamy. I mean, man, those figures were rare, and he was telling me how much money they were worth and stuff. So it's like, wow, imagine if you didn't do that. I doubt they probably make that figure and make it collectible and rare and everything else. So it's pretty cool. Like, even if it's a mistake or something silly, that it could kind of turn out that way.
That's kind of a case in life too. I try and tell my son this all the time. You're going to have things in life that go not the way they're supposed to go. Things that are going to go bad. You're going to be really upset, or you're going to be embarrassed, or whatever, as long as it's not causing anyone real problems and it doesn't cause any real tragedies or anything. It's always going to be something that you're going to be able to look back in the years to come and go, you know what? That happened. And now I can laugh about it because it's something I'll remember. Again, it's no different than what we're saying about, Fred Ottman there. I mean, it's something he will be able to tell and folks will be able to laugh about for years and years and years. And again, it's just something in life. Things aren't going to go your way. I remember one time, like this was crazy. I was in the Netherlands, and I had never been in the Netherlands before. I didn't speak Dutch, not a prayer. And I was in this taxi cab, and this crazy taxi cab driver was going the wrong direction. And I was like, no, my hotel's over there. It was crazy. And we almost got hit and everything. But still to this day, I always remember that night. I was like, that was so crazy. And if she'd have just dropped me off at the hotel, I never remembered it.
Right.
Wouldn't have had a memory of it at all. But because it was wrong and because it was memorable, and she had a Tom Petty mixtape in the car, and she was playing Last Dance with Mary Jane, and it's like, she grew up in an Indiana town. I was like, man, that's Indiana town. This is small world, and I'll always remember that. Same thing with any of these Wrestle Crap characters. They're things you're going to remember, and that's what's awesome about it. Things that you'll remember and you'll laugh about.
Yep. Who's the ultimate Wrestle Crap? Is it Shockmaster? Is that the ultimate, or Gobbledygooker? What's when you think of Wrestle Crap, what's the ultimate headline for?
I mean, the Gobbledygooker is what we call our award. The year-end award. A lot of people say, what is the ultimate? So I always look at that, especially because whenever he came out of the egg and they were incomplete. This is, the announcers were like, oh man, people love it, and then you see the kids booing and everything else, spitting on the guy. So the Gobbledygooker is the one that I always think of. The guy that helps me do the site and Wrestle Crap Radio, Blade Braxton, he would always look at the Black Scorpion, because you have this terrible magician act And that was insane too. And then the one we always said was the absolute worst gimmick, the number one worst gimmick of all time that actually did do damage, would have been the Red Rooster, because it essentially killed Terry Taylor's career. He'd never go out again. People would just chant, even if he was just a road agent for TNA or something, people would still chant Rooster, Rooster at him. It was like, oh my gosh, that's awful.
So bad.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to always remember back, was it just because McMahon thought he was too cocky, he was going to make him the Red Rooster? Was that like the gist of like the joke behind it?
I don't know. I don't know that anybody has ever given me a real answer as to why that was. It was always something that, just from day one, you kind of sat there and said, man, this is not going to work at all. And Bobby Heenan, God bless him. Just Bobby Heenan was my hero. Always was, always will be. And I got to meet him and talk to him about it. And he was just like, that was just the worst idea ever. And we all knew going in, this is not going to work. And they tried to do the best they could with it, but they all knew. They all knew.
Yeah, that was so bad. Then they turned him babyface, and he's feuding with Brooklyn Brawler, and Heenan's in the middle again. It didn't work for me anyway. I was just like, man, that was such respect, especially looking back. I mean, he was quite a wrestler, quite a worker. I mean, he in the Mid-South, he was great. I mean, it's just like, man, what the hell was Vince thinking on that one?
Yeah. It was also something I just look at it and it's like, man, if Bobby Heenan can't make it work, you're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, you're screwed. Yeah, you're in a main event of Survivor Series '88. Nope, it's still not working. Like nothing is clicking.
Yeah. Poor Rooster.
It was not good at all. But as far as like Wrestle Crap in general, like when you think about Wrestle Crap, like through the years, does Royal Rumble 2005 like stick out when Vince breaks his his two knees or whatever the hell, tears his two quads, like the stuff like that just keep
quads and
it's like stuff like that just pop in your head, like, okay, that's hilarious. Another Wrestle Crap moment, like stuff like that as the years go by.
To me, it's more, just those memorable moments or those characters where you're like, who thought this was a good idea? Who came up with this idea of projecting maggots onto a wrestling mat? Thought, you know what, people are really going to enjoy that. That's really what I look for is more the stuff that's just so far out there and so far out of left field, that people just, you kind of question how on earth did anyone think this was a good idea? So that's more along the lines of what I look for.
Mantar, stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mantar. That was another classic, guy coming out with whenever you have an outfit and your apparatus is so large you can't really get in the ring with it. That may be, although now that I come to think of it, that was about the time Big Van Vader would come to the ring with his big smoke helmet. So maybe that was their answer to Big Van Vader.
Yes.
Mantar.
Although Vader would always put it down.
Right, and make it smoke and everything.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Interesting thought. Yeah, I don't think it quite worked though for Mantar. Worked for Vader.
No, Mantar was no Vader. That I can tell you.
So did Wrestle Crap spawn the Death of WCW book, or was that there and Alvarez kind of came to you with the idea? Like it almost seems like Wrestle Crap, that kind of aura around it, almost created the Death of WCW book.
What happened is I had written the Wrestle Crap book, and it was funny because that book almost didn't come to pass. I had I had started the site, and it had gotten some popularity, whatever, and someone had written into the mailbag at the time, because you didn't have like forums and that's how old it was. You sure didn't have social media. Forums were very few and far between as well. And someone had written into the mailbag and said, would you ever consider writing a book? And I was like, yeah, sure. My degree is actually, break kayfabe. My degree is actually in broadcast journalism. So yeah, I probably could write a book. It would probably be kind of an interesting challenge, just to see if I could do it. And so I said, but I have no idea who I would talk to. And somebody said, you need to talk with ECW Press up in Canada. I said, okay. So I got a hold of ECW Press, and they said, okay, well, if you're really serious about writing this book, you need to provide I can't even remember what all, a table of contents, a sample chapter, who the book would be targeted to. And so I sent all that stuff to them, and they got it, and they're like, yeah, they think this could be really, really good. It's really funny. Obviously you have an audience. We think this would really, really work. And so we'll get back to you in a week with a contract. So a week goes by, no contract. 2 weeks go by, no contract. 2 months go by, no contract. And I'm just like, oh, it was a neat idea, but that's never going to happen. 6 months go by, and they actually said, we're ready to do the Wrestle Crap, we're ready to do your book. And I said, great. And, I was like, this is awesome. And they said, we just have one condition. It will not be called Wrestle Crap. And I am generally a really, laid back, calm kind of guy. And I'll never forget, I just said, what on earth are you talking about? And they said, no, we can't call it Wrestle Crap. I mean, they may not carry it at bookstores with the word crap in the title. And I said, and I just got really mad. And I said, if you're not going to call it Wrestle Crap, I'm not going to write the book for you. And I just hung up the phone. And I immediately went to my wife and I said, I just completely screwed up and I lost the book contract because I wouldn't change the title.
Yeah.
But then 2 weeks later, they came back and they said, okay, we'll do it. We'll call it Wrestle Crap. We'll roll the dice. It sold better for them than what they ever imagined, because I think there were people in that office that thought this is going to sell like 20 copies. And it sold a pretty good amount for them. So they said, we'd really like you to do a sequel. I mean, it was good enough that they came back and said, we want you to write another book. And I said, okay. And so I was debating what to do for the second book, because I didn't want to write another Wrestle Crap book. It was too soon. And I wasn't quite sure what to do. And I came up with 3 ideas. One was going to be Toy Crap, which would have been the worst toys that we had as children. Mm-hmm. So kind of a pop culture book. And I was going to do that. I dreamed of doing it with a guy named Matt that works for a site called Dinosaur Dracula. It's still kind of on my wish list one day. And I said, but the other 2 were wrestling books. And it was either the death of ECW or the death of WCW. And I kept bouncing around, what I would want to do. And it came to me again, I want to make people laugh. And the death of ECW would have just been too depressing, because you had people that people that were taking no pay trying to make this company work. Yep. So I was like, I'm going to do death of WCW, but I said, there's no way I can do. I don't know enough. I can write it in a comedy way, but I want to have a lot more in depth. And I was a subscriber to Figure 4 Weekly. And so I reached out to Brian. I said, I'm Artie Reynolds, WrestleCrap.com. I wrote this Wrestle Crap book. I'd really like to write Death of WCW, but I need a co-author. Would you consider doing it with me? And he was on board. And that was a great blessing. Because Brian, we both poured our heart and soul into that book. Both versions, we did the original in 2004 or whatever, and then we did another one 10 years later. We both just poured our heart and soul into that book, and out of that, it was a great blessing, and it's even better now because now I just view Brian as a really good friend. I just love his family, and his oldest daughter is just like the cutest thing ever. I'll never forget, meeting her, and I send her, Christmas gifts or whatever, just because I love her so much. And of course his grandma, who's on his podcast as well. I love her to death too. It's kind of like I just, as another friend. And that's what I always say about Wrestle Crap is, I started it never to try and gain followers or get views or anything. To be honest, I've never even not once have I ever looked at, number of page views or Google Analytics or any of that stuff. I've never looked at that. I just always wanted it to be something that, in the year 2000, that I had a lot of friends, that we would do wrestling shows or whatever. And I just always wanted something that my friends could go and they could laugh at. And the cool thing about Wrestle Crap is, still have those friends, that go and laugh at it, but I wound up with a lot more friends, and it could be people that have, read it since day one, or it can be, Brian Alvarez, who I'd never, done anything with if it weren't for Wrestle Crap. Blade Braxton, one of my best friends in the whole world. I had never met him without that. Or even like Vince Russo, I had never talked to him. I had never talked to Bobby Heenan or any of these people. And it's why, I consider it a great blessing. And it's the coolest thing about Wrestle Crap is I got to meet all these cool people and, be on, be interviewed for shows like this. It's incredibly cool. It's just a blessing.
Do you and Brian get a lot of heat for Death of WCW at all, or is it mostly positive? Because obviously you've won 2 awards from the
Yeah.
the Meltzer Awards. I know that it caused a lot of heat over this past year because AEW won all the awards and that whole thing. But you guys won the Book Awards twice, 2005 and 14, I believe it was. But do you guys get a lot of heat, or is it mostly positive?
It's mostly positive. The other thing I have learned over the years is you can please all of the people none of the time. And you're going to have people that don't like what you have to say. I remember one of the very first reviews of the first Wrestle Crap book was with Slam Wrestling, and it just said Wrestle Crap is full of crap. That was the headline, and it wasn't a positive review at all. But I thought, you know what, that guy, he has a right to his opinion. It's the same thing with anybody. So if anybody wants to say something negative, I never take it to heart. I'm just like, oh, okay. You disagree with that. It's kind of like when people say, I almost wore an AEW shirt on for this show tonight, but I knew if I did that, people would continue to say, well, Artie and Brian, they're just on AEW's payroll.
Yes.
And it's like, man, I must not have been a very good negotiator because I've not gotten up a single penny from them. I should have done a better deal. So people can say negative things, and they're more than welcome to. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. We stand by what we said, and the big thing is that there are parts of that book, even today, I will go back if I'm having a bad day and I'll read parts of that book just to make me laugh, because it makes me laugh, and that's what I always wanted to do.
Entertaining for sure. What do you think what was the leading downfall, or what, when do you think it really took a turn? You think it was 99 was the downturn for WCW?
I think when they had no follow-up, they had this incredible story with the NWO. I mean, that was great stuff. And people go, well, Bischoff stole that from New Japan or whatever. Okay. Who cares? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter where he got it. Doesn't matter if he stole it or anything else. He took it and he revolutionized the business. He put together something that had everyone talking. Everyone wanted to see, what's the NWO going to do? Well, who's going to be the third man? Oh my gosh, Hulk Hogan, he's a bad guy now. Oh my gosh, that's incredible. I got to see what's going to happen next week. But the problem is there was never a resolution to that. And you have this incredible, just imagine if there was the Marvel films, okay, with Thanos. Imagine if they just kept doing 20 more films where Thanos never got his comeuppance. I mean, eventually everybody be like, is this going anywhere? Is this always going to be exactly the same? And I think that was the start of it. They had another chance with Goldberg, but they didn't know what to do with him either. I remember, again, talking about Bobby Heenan. Heenan just told me, they had him. He was huge. And whenever we saw, we're going to beat him, we were like, why? You didn't beat Hulk Hogan back in the day whenever he was, drawing all these sellouts and everything. Why on earth would you do that? Keep Goldberg strong until people don't want to see him strong anymore. And again, they just didn't know what they had. They didn't know what they had.
It's one of those things where, man, like you wish you can go back and change things. I was like the biggest WCW fan. So a
Mhm.
lot of things I wish, could have been changed or could have been different. Just interesting to note that you were a broadcast journalist, like your hero Bobby Heenan was a broadcast journalist. I keep thinking about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
He hit the nail on the head. I don't know if Goldberg should have lost. Oddly enough, though, when he did lose that pop that night at Starrcade, I don't know if you remember, it was a huge pop. It was
Mhm.
crazy. But you think about it, it's like, okay, that was good for that one night. Where do you go from here? He
Right.
probably shouldn't have lost because that's when they started to really lose momentum. Then then you throw another mistake on there. They mentioned Mick Foley winning the title.
Oh yeah.
800,000 people switch over. So it was like little by little. Even Starrcade
Yeah.
97, Sting should have squashed Hogan.
Oh yeah.
Boom. I mean,
Absolutely. And a lot of people point to that, and I think that is a I think that that's kind of a microcosm of what happened. Is again, you had somebody that this should have just it should have just gone. This should have been the big culmination. Sting comes out and he destroys Hogan, and everybody's happy. Everybody would have been so happy. They've been high fiving and everything else. When people left that night, they were more kind of confused.
yep.
And that is not, that was their biggest pay-per-view, ever they had done. And you sometimes you just overthink things. And I think they did there.
Big time. It's funny too because me and my buddies, we taped it on VHS back then.
Oh yeah.
We would go back after the show because we were so confused. We wanted I think Sting's shoulder was up. Like we were like trying to figure out.
Right.
We're like 17. I think we were 17 at that point, or have we? What was it? So Starkey 97. No, we were 15 at that point. So
Right.
it's like, oh, he had a shoulder. Oh, so we're so confused as a fan. We're clueless. We're like, what happened? Like that was so bad.
Yeah, and it was something you're trying to write your own storyline so it made sense for you. You never
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
have that. You never want to have
Yeah.
that.
Yep. So as we hit the wind down, we head towards the finish here. Who is like, as far as wrestler crap, the very worst of wrestling? What about the very best of wrestling? Who's your favorite? Who's some guys that you look back, you're like, okay, this is why I love the business. These guys are the best.
Yeah, Bobby Heenan. It's not even a contest. I know it wasn't when he was wrestling, but when the first time I ever watched wrestling, it would have been in the right past the Rock and Wrestling Connection. And I had a buddy of mine who I said, "Hey, you gonna come over?" All we did was play video games. It's all I did. And I said, "You gotta come over tonight. Let's play some video games." He's like, "Can't do it. I'm gonna watch wrestling tonight." I said, "Wrestling? What are you talking about?" And so I watched Primetime Wrestling. And one of the first matches I ever saw was a British Bulldogs match. And Dynamite Kid and Davey Boy too back then, but especially Dynamite Kid was so awesome. And I was like, this is really interesting. This is kind of interesting. I'm going to watch it, again in next week or whatever. And what I saw that hooked me that's what got me to watch was the British Bulldogs. So I always have a soft spot in my heart for them. But it was seeing Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon. Still to this day, and I had mentioned if I'm having a bad day, if I'm having a bad day, I will just go back and I will watch Heenan and Monsoon. Primetime Wrestling is just still my all-time favorite thing. All-time favorite thing. Now, as far as in ring or whatever, there's been so many greats over the years. I was always a huge Bret Hart fan. I loved Austin. Rock was fantastic, and now. Wednesday nights, I'm not on the payroll. Let me make this abundantly clear. But I love watching AEW. I love seeing these new people that I had never really seen. Like I'd never seen, the Young Bucks in any kind of capacity, and Hangman Page and Omega, and that Omega Page Bucks match from a couple years or whenever that was last year, right?
Yep.
That was just incredible. And Bucks FTR, again, British Bulldogs, right? So I love tag team wrestling, and so I love seeing awesome tag team wrestling. And you can decry, the lack of psychology or whatever you want in Young Bucks matches. I don't really care. I just enjoy watching those matches, and I think they're awesome. Love watching them. Anytime the Bucks come out, I just love watching them. So I'm sure I lost a lot of credibility with a lot of people, but that's okay.
You're hated now. You can't believe you said that. Oh my God.
That's all right. People say Wrestle crap is full of crap again. That's okay. What comes around, it all comes back around.
I feel like AEW, it's just something different. WWE, it's like,
yes,
you know exactly where you're going to get. AEW, sometimes it's like, okay, you have like almost like a sense of optimism. WWE is like, okay, here we go. Same old, same old. Maybe not with Roman Reigns so much. It's a little bit different. I kind of like that character, but like Raw every week, it's like, all right, here we go again. What's going on?
It's also something that and I have thought a lot about this, and I almost think I like AEW more as I think I like it more as just, and this isn't a knock against them. There's a lot of things in AEW that are great. Bucks, Moxley, Omega. That Omega act with Don Callis is tremendous. Feels like someone you want to see succeed. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's like this grassroots movement, and I'll never forget that at the first Starcast and the second Starcast, which was Double or Nothing out in Vegas. I was there with the guy from Pro Wrestling Illustrated, not Apter. I want to say it was
Stu Sachs.
Stu Sachs. Conrad got me tickets for Double or Nothing. I was sitting right next to Stu Sachs, and Stu Sachs, great guy. And we're like watching this, and these people, it's like a grassroots movement where people have been so beaten down by WWE. They want so badly to see somebody else succeed. They want so badly to have an alternative. So it's this passionate group. And sometimes that's not the best thing either. Sometimes people are a little crazy then. But with this, there was this passionate group, and it's this grassroots movement that you're like, I want to be part of this. I want to see this succeed because these people seem happy. I mean, it was funny because I had listened to this. You had mentioned the Observer Awards, and Dave had Tony Khan on. Okay. And Tony Khan just sounded like he was so happy. And I thought, when was the last time we ever saw, Vince McMahon happy? When was the last time we saw Triple H happy? When was the last time we saw, Stephanie happy? When was the last time we saw anyone in WWE truly happy? Like they're on some kind of call or something, and you see these people that are happy. And it hit me. The last person I saw that was happy, that seemed really happy to be out there with the fans and everything, her name was Becky Lynch. And she got super popular. Why? I think a lot of it was people were like, I want that. That woman seems happy. She seems happy to be out there. She seems like she's really enjoying life. And isn't that what we should all do? And isn't that what we should all be striving for? So whenever I heard that interview with Tony Khan, he just sounded like he was so happy. And can't we all be happy? I would love to see Vince just, go on a conference call and talk about how, oh, man, things are great, and smiling and laughing. And but you don't ever see that. You don't see that. And I think it just puts a dark cloud over WWE. And they always like to say we want to put smiles on people's faces. Maybe put smiles on your own faces first.
True. Very, very true. Tony Khan, AEW swept the awards, like I mentioned. So yeah, he's living it up right now. He's loving life.
I think even if he wasn't, I don't think he would still be, super negative. It just seems, and again, that could just be they have sold a bill of goods to old R.D. Reynolds and he bought it, but I just seem like it feels to me like these are people you want to see succeed. They seem like they're decent people and they want to present something that people are going to enjoy watching.
For sure. Now, as far as yourself and what you got going on and all your plugs and stuff, or is it, is it WrestleCrap.com? Give us all the plugs and everything you got going on.
WrestleCrap.com, always the best place to go. I'm on Facebook, WrestleCrapRD, and WrestleCrap, and then Twitter's the same thing, WrestleCrapRD. I'm mostly, as you can tell, I'm an older gentleman. It's okay. I've come to accept that I'm in no demographic that anyone ever caters to now. So I'm mostly on old person social media, which is Facebook. So,
what about the books? Where can everybody get the books?
Go to Amazon or go to WrestleCrap.com. You can link out to Amazon and get them there. We have WrestleCrap, WrestleCrap, Death of WCW, and then also the WrestleCrap Book of Lists, which was a fun project I got to work on years ago.
Is Death of WCW still your favorite book?
Oh man, that's like asking which of your favorite kids. I can't do that. I can't do that.
Hey, I am a big fan of Death of WCW. I like it. I like Nitro too, but Death of WCW though, that's I don't know. Like you said, it's much more entertaining. Nitro definitely more analytical, but I am a big fan of Death of WCW. Even if Bischoff doesn't like it because he hasn't read it, I'm still a fan.
That's okay. One day, maybe I'll send him the audiobook and he could at least listen to it.
Yeah, there you go. Good idea.
Yeah. Yep.
RJ, thank you for all the time. I really appreciate it. Great stuff.
Absolutely. Awesome. Anytime you need anything else, just let me know.